بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمد ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to all the listeners and participants to this very important and vital seminar. My name is Mufti Moosa Salie. I am Mufti at the Jamiatul Ulama KZN, and this PowerPoint presentation is on behalf of the United Ulama Council of South Africa with a very important topic of the attack on family values and its effect on our children. As an introduction, the first thing I would like to say is that decades of research have shown that a stable family unit, which includes a father and a mother, is at the foundation of children's well-being and healthy development. Few things are more catastrophic for a child than experience of their parents divorcing. You would find amongst children that lack the support of both of their parents and who have experienced the trauma of divorce, that their constant dua, perhaps on a daily basis, is that the father and mother reunite so that they can have a harmonious and joint household once again. I want to speak first on the systematic attack on family values, and that has come from a number of sources. Number one, it comes from secular education, it comes from the media, and it comes from governments as well. When we look at secular education, one of the first things that we note is that there is great emphasis on making your career the most important aspect of your life. And this is the same whether it comes to males and females, and rather in today's times, the push is so much greater on females due to feminism and the feministic thought that females must outdo males in every sphere of society, even in male-dominated spheres, traditionally male-dominated spheres of the workplace. And you will also find that there are a number of Muslim female professionals that would go to Muslim schools and lecture the females in particular about how important their career is. And when you put career over marriage, then what happens is marriage is delayed. And when marriage is delayed, and normally a person goes through high school, goes through university. By the time they are through university, they are perhaps 23 to 25 years of age. Then they dedicate time to their career, and that brings them perhaps to the age of more or less 30, 35, or even the late 30s by the time they start thinking of getting married. And when this happens, then obviously every person has natural urges within themselves. And when those urges are not given a chance to be fulfilled in a halal manner, then many a times they are fulfilled in a haram manner. And also when women reach this particular age, then they find it much more difficult to find a suitable partner to settle down, and thus the chances of and possibility of marriage decreases over age. The other thing is sex education, which opens the doors of immorality and perversion and portrays the same as normal behavior. This has a direct effect on marriage because it breaks down the importance of the marital structure. In the eyewitness news, and this was carried by many news outlets in South Africa. Perhaps I think this was in 2022, just last year, when the basic education department defends teaching of sex education to grade 4 pupils. And this is a curriculum that is promoted and being promoted all over the world. And in defense, what do they say? They say we are teaching age-appropriate content. Let me give you an example of what the United Nations and the World Health Organizations in the document, the latest document on the development of sexual curriculum in schools, what do they say about age-appropriate content? As you can see in the highlighted box, teach 9-year-old children about masturbation. This is one of the global goals, and they have made it clear that by 2030, they want this system to be established throughout the world. It was met with much uproar when it was announced in many countries over the world, especially in the UK, if you're following the news, that from the age of 9 to 12 years old, you explain to them, boys and girls, about masturbation. We have even heard and seen reports that in some schools in the United States, masturbation was given as homework, as your homework assignment. You are to masturbate and report on the results. of your experience the next day in class. Children from the age of 5 years old are being taught about sex and sexual behavior. So this is part of the attack of the United Nations, World Health Organizations, and secular education in general against our children. When we look at media, then for a very long time, the Western media has been advancing anti-family values. There has been much attack against marriage and the institution of marriage, ridiculing of marriages, focusing on the negatives of children, showing children on TV or on series or in adverts as burdens who tantrum all the time, make your life a misery, and on a whole ridiculing the marriage situation, eradication of morality, the social stigma of illicit relations. If we go back just 50 years in time, you will find that a person having an illicit child, there was so much stigma to that. It was considered such a horrendous thing in society. But in today's times, practically does not exist. People go through it without even blinking an eye. This is an excerpt or a cover of Time magazine published in 2013, where it speaks of the child-free life, when having it all means not having children. So this has been the agenda of the media for a very long time. Some of the agendas that they use, or some of the ideologies they propagate that have a detrimental effect on marriage, is one, the LGBTQ community, which attacks the very essence of good family values and structures. Feminism, as had been touched on by Mufti Jakhura in his presentation, which also breaks in a large part the harmony between husband and wife, facing them both in the same role, whereas they have not identical roles, but they have complementary roles to each other. And those complementary roles are actually what creates a beneficial and a loving and nurturing family relationship. And the other thing is hedonism, where people do and live according to their desires, because to be married and to sacrifice yourself in a marital relationship takes a lot out of a person. There must be a lot of sabr, there must be a lot of strength, there must be a lot of patience, there must be a lot of dedication to the marital structure. But when a person is living only for their own gratification and for their own desires, then it is very hard for such a person to maintain a stable family relationship. So when we look at media, and this, I would like to, display this quote in front of you. I think it is a very pertinent quote. It comes from a book called The Overhauling of Straight America. And this book was written by Hunter Madsen and Marshall Kirk, which are the two main gay proponents of the LGBT agenda in the United States of America. This book was written in the 1980s, and it was the blueprint by which America actually changed its entire outlook on the LGBT movement. It was the gay agenda at that time. And this is what they say. They say where we talk is important. The visual media, film and television are plainly the most powerful image makers in Western civilization. The average American household watches over 7 hours of TV daily. Those hours open up a gateway into the private world of straights through which a Trojan horse might be passed. So far, gay Hollywood has provided our best covert weapon in the battle to desensitize the mainstream. So there is no hiding the agenda. The agenda is quite clear that these agendas are here, and they are here to destroy not only our morality, but the moral fabric of society. We look at government. What role does government play in breaking the family structure? So we find from the legal aspects, we find issues of alimony, we find asset seizure after divorce through community of property, and even when there is no community of property, and we find biased custody laws. Not so long ago, just perhaps a few months ago, this was trending in social media, Ashraf Hakimi and his divorce with his wife. And Ashraf Hakimi is a leading football player, and Normally, they make massive amounts of money. So his wife files for divorce, and she believes that she will score a windfall from her husband's, assets, only to find out later that the husband had transferred most of his assets on his mother's name. And it ended up that in reality, when you looked at the balance sheets, the wife had more than the husband. So the husband was actually taking from the wife's assets rather than the other way around. And this caused a great stir around the world. And this is a problem that Western society has been battling for a very long time, where people are afraid to get married. Successful men are afraid to get married. And the reason that they're afraid to get married is because you have a system of no-fault divorce, where the wife can just say, I don't want this marriage anymore, and walk away with 50% of her husband's assets, of her husband's estate. And which man would want to go through that? And also, which woman would want to go through that if she was a wealthy woman? So government plays a huge role in providing negative sentiment against the institution of marriage. With all these things, it is a natural outcome that we find many broken homes, many broken families. And what is the effect of the broken families? We have trauma, we have behavioral problems, and we have a cycle of perpetuation. The trauma that I would say perhaps all parties go through some form of trauma, but the greatest trauma is experienced undoubtedly by the children. The emotional damage that they suffer, it's perhaps on a level where in many situations they are unable to unshackle themselves from the trauma of a broken family. It creates low self-esteem in such children, and perhaps one of the worst things that happens is a guilt factor that rises in the heart of the child. As a small child, the child is asking themselves, is it my fault? Is it my fault that this marriage has broken, that my husband or that my father and that my mother are not, part of my life? Is it my fault that my father has walked out of the house? This is part of the emotional trauma that children experience. Ben Spencer, the science editor of the Daily Mail, he made mention growing up without a father could permanently alter the structure of the brain. This is the effect on children of broken homes. We look at behavioral challenges. We find poor grades, we find disruptive behavior, we find harmful behavior, we find criminal behavior. And children with divorced parents are twice as likely to attempt suicide. In almost every sphere of life where the family system is broken, the children are disadvantaged in almost every single sphere of life. We look at the perpetuation cycle that this creates. Those who have been through such challenges and such have grown up in such environments, the statistics in the United States that say that children or daughters who grow up in fatherless homes, they have an over 160% chance of conceiving and giving birth out of wedlock. And even if they get married, there is over a 90% chance that that marriage will end in divorce. So it is a perpetuation of the cycle. There is a generational impact. The Journal of Marriage and Family says that men who grew up with absent fathers were more likely to become absent fathers themselves. And they also found that women who grew up with absent fathers are more likely to have children with absent fathers. So it is a horrible cycle of perpetuation that seems to have no end in mind. Now, it is a reality that not every household will, every child will enjoy a stable family relationship. What can be done? Managing single parent homes. Sometimes it is the unfortunate reality in life that some people are just not marriage material. And as much as a person wants to save the marriage, and as much as a person wants to provide that family structure where the father is there and the mother is there, but it may be such that one of the spouses is so abusive and has such horrible personality traits that it's just impossible to live with that person, and it will only cause more damage to the family and to the children if people are in that relationship. So there are many homes where there are single parent homes. What can be done? I cannot say many things, but I will just speak of a few things which are cardinal points. One is never speak ill of the other parent to the child. The other is never deprive a child of the other parent. All contact with the other parent, even if it is once a week, even if it is once every 2 weeks, even if it's once a month, has an effect on the upbringing of the children. Children are a trust for us to care for. They are not pawns in games of revenge. And this we see so often where, custody is granted to one parent, and the other, and that parent who has custody does everything in their power to poison the mind of the child against the father and to deprive the father of any visitation rights. The Nabi of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in one hadith, he makes mention of man khabbaba abdan ala mawla. The Nabi of Allah gives the example of a slave and master relationship. If we, rewind our minds several centuries back, when the institution of slavery was still in existence, the Nabi of Allah speaks about a relationship between a master and a slave. And he says, whoever poisons the mind of the slave against his master, that person has no place in my ummah, falaysa minna. If this is the relationship, between a master and a slave, then what about the person who poisons a child against their own father, against their own mother? The other thing about managing single parent homes is we take note of the Islamic distribution of custody, and more so in the Hanafi madhab, the way it has been delineated that a son will grow up and live with his mother until the age of 7, because until that point he needs the love and affection more, and then he is to be given to the father because he needs the adab, the discipline, the ta'deeb, and the masculine characteristics of the father in his life. For a female, she will live with her mother as a child until the age of 9 or until the age of puberty, and thereafter that goes to the father, because the father is in a better position to protect his daughter, to protect the morality of his daughter, and to bring her up with sound morals. Both obviously parents play a role in the child, but custody, this is the Islamic distribution. And even if we look at modern research, what does it say? This is Kevin Wong did a PhD. He based his data on Statistics Canada. He says, based on municipal level data, my research found that the concentration of single mother families caused youth crime to increase. On the other hand, the concentration of single father families had a neutral effect, near zero on youth crimes, similar to the effect of two-parent families. So when the child grows up, it is more advantageous for the child that we adopt the Islamic distribution of custody and give the child over to the father, obviously, with the proviso that the father is a suitable candidate for that. We're not talking about giving the child over to a person who's a drug addict, etc. But where the father is a suitable candidate, do not deprive the child, because then you will be possibly ruining the life of the child going ahead. Vulnerability. We're almost finished with this presentation. Children need love and protection. If they do not receive love at home, they will definitely seek it elsewhere. A neglected child will latch on to attention given by others. I want to, make note of, certain very frightening statements of the LGBT community in regards to children and how they are the master manipulators of children. This is part of a song that was sung by the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus. San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus in July 2021. They said, you're just frightened. You think that we'll corrupt your kids if our agenda goes unchecked. Funny, just this once you're correct. We'll convert your children. Happens bit by bit, quietly and subtly, and you will barely notice it. The gay agenda is coming home. The gay agenda is here. We're coming for them. we're coming for your children. In many marches, LGBT marches, pride marches that they call them, you will hear this: we're here, we are here, we are here, we are queer, and we are coming for your children. And LGBT activists around this world, they defend this chant that is constantly being sounded by LGBT proponents. And if this, does not put a shiver down our spines to, for concern of the welfare of our children, then I don't know what will. In conclusion, would like to say that humanity faces an onslaught against family values by myriad forces. It is thus vital that we support and uphold families to our level best. A stable and happy family is the foundation of a thriving and secure society. It offers a multitude of benefits, not only to its members, but to society as a whole. And one of its greatest advantages, especially for Muslims, is that it provides a safe haven for the nurturing of the Iman and the protection of the Islamic values of our children, and therefore of society and whole. And as this apt quote is here on the left-hand side of the screen, when the roots are deep, there is no reason to fear the wind. May Allah Ta'ala give us tawfiq, that we support our family structures as best we can. May Allah Ta'ala bless us with stable family structures, and may Allah Ta'ala enable us to raise our children in secure, protected, and such environments that give them the best advantages for their lives going ahead. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen.